Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. So, how many of you have heard that song sang to you? You don't have to tell me how many times. How many of you remember the exact date and time of your birth? Or at least were told. And how many of you were told where you were born? Well, for me, everything is made up. I don't know my birth date. I don't know the time. All I know is it's somewhere in Korea. Hello, my name is Shane Carlin, and I'm a Korean-American adoptee, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, my identity development, and give you some tips, if you will, for those that are interested, that have adoptees in their home, that know adoptees, or are interested in adopting. In terms of my own identity development as an adult, some of the things I've learned personally myself, and some of the things that I hope that people will gain through my personal experiences. In 1971, and we do know that, a policeman was walking the streets of Seoul, South Korea, and found a baby on a corner of the street. Looked down and found nothing other than a baby waddled up in a blanket. No information, no name, no anything other than a baby in a blanket. The officer took the baby to the hospital, estimated the birth about within the few months that the baby was found, which was less than a year old. And then took me, that being me, to the orphanage. During those times in the orphanage, I spent there for 5 years in Seoul, South Korea. And I was going in that experience in terms of things that I never dreamed that I would experience today. And one of the things during that experience was of how I was in a room about this size, or one could argue a classroom size. That's where I ate, that's where we slept, and that's where we played, the same place. Imagine all of us where we now today have kitchens, bathrooms, living rooms, DVDs, or whatever today's technology of watching video and other things like that. But that's not what we had in the orphanage. In fact, I had the exciting cabbage soup morning, day, and night. That was my meal. Then in 1976, a wonderful family in northern Kentucky wanted to have another child but could not. And so they adopted me. I was very fortunate to be able to come over to the United States and live in a place called northern Kentucky. The only Asian that I saw as I was growing up was the one in the mirror. So as you can imagine, on top of that, I was also living on a farm. So there weren't many neighbors nearby, and that was my experience. But as you see me today, I feel pretty, well, I've got some weight here. So, meaning that I'm not starving now. And that was the experience that I was going through. But, on my own personal, whether I like to say that I'm sometimes my own psychologist, whether it's conscious or unconscious, every time I go to a buffet, I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this, get this, get this, get that. That's why I want to invent a triple-decker plate. Wouldn't that be cool as you're going through a buffet line? And so another reason why all of us are feeling very good and very large, like myself. But the problem is this, is that I'm going through this, but not knowing sometimes that, Shane, it's really okay. You're going to get food the next day. But that was kind of part of my experience growing up. In fact, my parents even told a story one time when I was younger. We, of course, had dogs that whatever item that we had that night, we'd put the scraps in and put the dog food. This is right when I had gotten here, and put it on the floor, and Mom would put the scraps in. But one of the things that they said I did was actually start eating the dog food because I was so malnourished and so hungry. So I say that also to stop and think about every time we eat. Every time we think about, ugh, I don't want to eat there, that sucks. Or those times where I'm like, ugh, I don't want this, or I'm so full, and we take more than we need. and we waste it, and how many times. And sometimes we think, oh, that's just a thing overseas. That's just somewhere else that people are starving. But it's not true. It may be someone that you know, and maybe someone you didn't know, but you do know them. So as I was growing up in northern Kentucky, one of the things that I was always telling people is, they were like, what's your name? Shane Carlin. Ooh, that sounds very Irish. Yes, don't I look Irish? And so it was very cool to be able to say, hi, I'm Shane Carlin, I'm Irish. And in today's political correct society, they're like, ha-ha, or yeah? And so, of course, I'm like, oh, no, I'm just JK, just kidding. And I would say, no, I'm a Korean-American adoptee, and people would be like, oh, okay, now I can laugh. But the thing is this, is as I was growing up, some of the struggles that I was dealing with, and I don't want you to think that my experience growing up as a Korean adoptee was so horrible that my life is just disastrous, because it was not. Now, some adoptees will have really horrific stories. Some adoptees will have stories where they have abandoned their own parents that have actually adopted them. I'm very thankful that I didn't have that experience. I've even had backhanded compliments saying, wow, Shane, you're the first Korean adoptee I've ever met that's not effed up. It's like, oh, thanks, I guess. And so some of the things I want to tell you about is some of my journey in terms of my identity development and feeling proud about who I am today and what my identity was like. And so one of the things that I always like bringing up is dating. We all have had that experience in dating, right? And so being the only, and I was, growing up in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and for those of you, I think there's some wide age gaps, age ranges here. How many remember Miami Vice? Don Johnson, oh my God, he was so hot, right? All the women loved him, had the flowing blonde hair going back, and that was one of the things I wanted to do. I didn't dye my hair blonde. However, every time I'd go get my hair cut, how do you get my hair flowing back? How do you do that? Because at that time, society was saying what was considered sexy. What were, quote unquote, girls going after in my high school? They weren't going after this look. I was the only one. So I tried to do different things of like, wow, I even had those thoughts of, can I change my eyes? Can I change my hair texture? Can I change, my skin tone? All those things, because in today's identity development, and it hasn't changed, people want to be liked. People want to be appreciated. People want to be welcomed. But if you look different and you're the only one, that's very difficult. And so during that time, I would try to do different things, and I always said, the girls were really nice to me, because I'd say, oh, this one girl I'd be very interested in. I'd say, hey, you want to go out? You want to date? And then she'd use the other F word. I just want to be friends. I was like, oh. And it was common over and over and over again. I was thinking, wow, if I was in Korea, would I be a stud? Because I didn't know what they were looking for. Well, I did, but I was like, how can I make that change? So fast forward to 6th grade, my parents take me to the World's Fair in Tennessee, and I'm excited, and everything Korea, take the flag and eat kimchi and all those other items that people know the surface level of Korea. And I'm excited. I'm now wanting to, learn a little bit about myself. I'm pumped. And then I come back to Whiteville, USA, and all I want to be is back to what was acceptable. So I denied it. Fast forward to 9th grade in high school, and my mother was like, there's a Korean camp that I'd like you to go to. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to go. And say, it's an opportunity for you to learn your culture, different things like that. So finally it got to the point where, Shane, it's going to cost a lot of money. Do you want to go or not? Fine, I'll go. So I go to this camp. I go, it's in Michigan. I'm outside. I'm at the bus station where we're going to take this bus to, we're in Detroit, but take this bus 2.5 hours into nowhere. But the freakiest thing for me was like, holy crap, look at all these people that look like me. I didn't know what to do. And so, what I did was I enjoyed that experience. I appreciated all the things that I was learning how to, well, there were different workshops that you could take, and of course I took the cooking one. And so it was about, how to make kimchi, how to make Korean food, learn how to write. That was so spectacular for me. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then, so that was a week long. So I wanted to go to Michigan State. I wanted to go to Michigan, one of those schools, because that's where our counselors were from. And then it got to the point, well, no, it's too costly. Probably should go in-state. So then I kind of reverted back into, okay, I'm going back to Whiteville, USA. And I'm kind of just not remembering what my identity really is. So then, throughout that experience, I go through college, kind of enjoy myself, still not really knowing who I really am and still not celebrating who I am. But then when I went to graduate school, there was, my program was about learning about yourself to nauseam. And one of the things was the eureka of all eurekas for me. I remember when we were talking about identity development of college students, we had to also use this on ourselves. So what I did was I was talking about my own identity development. I was talking about my past experiences, and someone said, Shane, when they don't see you with your parents, they only see you as Asian. And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I got to really start learning about who I am and what I'm about and try to understand that and empathize with that. And so that was when I wanted to just do everything Asian. I mean, it was like, oh my, it was just this new eureka. I advised the Asian American Association on campus. I wanted to eat every Korean, Chinese, every type of food you could think of. I wanted to, see if I could compare with other Asians and Asian Americans on a regular basis. And that's when my identity development helped me out. And from then on, when I moved to Chicago in 1999, I went on ahead and joined a Korean-American church. I went to Korean-American events. I joined NAP, the National Association of Asian American Professionals. I joined all these things. Until this day, I still enjoy that. But I don't want you to think that I've dismantled my personal experience of my identity development also with my parents. So let me kind of close with this. I want you to know that if we're talking to parents that are interested in doing this, if you're thinking of adoptees, some things that I would encourage parents to do as they're looking for or raising kids. One, please make sure that you try to have something that's every day for them, not just one time. For example, if it is Asian American child that you have, make sure that you have a magazine, videos, TV, different things that they can see that there are other people that look just like them. Two, get involved in other areas of where there are other Asians or Asian Americans, whether it's a church or some other community involvement or different things like that where they can see people that look like them. Three, when you go to those various restaurants, don't go, ew, that smells, or that's gross, or different things like that, because then they see that's not okay. When if the parents themselves could empathize with what it's like to be them, then they're going to be more adaptable to this. And fourth, the other thing is this, I always call it getting close to infinity, i.e. perfection, but you're only getting closer and closer but never reaching to it. And that is to empathize and try to be as much in their shoes as possible. So when they come home from school or when they hear an epithet that occurs to them, that they can finally realize what it's like to be an Asian American themselves and be able to empathize with that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and have a good day.